So, Kaisa is back and my old comm guide video is outdated. So Exterior will make a new and improved version of Kaisa Bruiser. In this video, we will cover the strongest items, strongest units, and strongest augments. With that, we start with our items. And our main DPS is Kaisa. And in her best in slot, always get this no matter what. You have to have this item on her, which is Last Whisper. This item allows you to break armor, so Kaisa does extra damage. And on top of that, because she's kinda AoE-ish with the trick shot synergy, she breaks armor almost everywhere. And then to amplify that item, having an IE is pretty good because it gives you more damage and you get more crit. Since Last Whisper also has crit, you also build IE to get more crit on top of that. And then your ability also crit on top of that. And then because everything's pretty tanky at the moment, having a Giant Slayer is really good right now. So you can almost destroy every tank that you can find. And then the best alternative items you could build is having a Spear Soldier. If you want to cast more, this is pretty good for that. It doesn't give you more damage, but it makes you cast a lot more quicker because her mana pool is very big. So if you're looking to cast even more, Spear Soldier is the way to go. And then the Death Blade, if you cannot build IE or Giant Slayer, Death Blade is okay because it amplifies your damage. And then one of her highest win rate items is a Guard Breaker. This item gives her a lot of damage amplification because if you hit a shield, you do even more damage. And her best Ornn artifact item hands down is Collector. This item is actually very powerful on her because it gives her crit, and on top of that, it gives you execution if they're below a certain amount of HP. So therefore, you get extra gold on top of that too, because the execution gives you a certain percentage to get gold after that kill. And the Sniper's Focus is very good for ranged units in general because the further the range is, the more damage you do. And then Affinity Force is always a good rounder item overall, so it's not bad to have on Kaisa. It's not the best, but it does the job. And then for your main tank, it will be Galio, and his best in slot item is having a Gargoyle Stoneplate because the way how his ability works, he taunts everyone around him, so therefore, the more units that hit him with this item, the more resistance he gets. And since a lot of units are hitting him, you want a healing item, which is Redemption. This item is very good on him because he can heal all that HP back that he lost somewhat. And then Declaw is also really good. Even though it's an 80 heavy meta, having Declaw is still pretty good because it also nullifies every AP unit that they have. And on top of that, it does give you some health with the benefit of some health regen on top of that. And then the reason why you don't want Bramble is because most of the units that are AD are shred heavy, not burst heavy. So that's why Declaw is very good for that, because most of the AP units it said are burst, not shredding. But if you do want armor, we have alternative items for that, which is having a Protector's Vow is a very good armor item. And this item actually is really good overall because it gives you both armor and magic resist if you hit 50% HP. And once you get to that HP, you also get a shield on top of that. So it makes your unit even last even longer. And then speaking of shield, a Crown Guard is very powerful with a chain vest and a rod. It gives you AP and it gives you a shield with armor. And then another pretty good decent armor item would be Steadfast Heart. This item is pretty good overall because it also gives you damage reduction if you have a certain amount of HP, which is like over 50% HP, you gain damage reduction. And then his best Ornn artifacts is having Eternal Winter because he taunts everyone. Having Eternal Winter is very powerful for that because every target will hit him, they'll get stunned. Light Shield Cross is a very powerful item on Galio because it amplifies his ability to give more armor and magic resist to his team. And on top of that, since he's gonna be the first one to die most of the time, after he dies, he gives everyone on his board shields and armor and magic resist. And one of the best Ornn artifacts you can pick up for Galio is Anima Visage for Galio because this item gives you a lot of magic resist, and on top of that, it gives you a lot of health regen. For Ink Shadow items, the best ones to hold the damaged ones would be Kaisa and Xayah, and those would be having Toxin, Fury, or Bombardment. Toxin is actually the best on Kaisa, but the other two is actually better for Xayah, but overall they could both use it, like all three of these. And then for the tank ones, Galio would be the best holder for Vitality, and then Silas would be the best holder for Force. Essentially, both of them can use either one, but this is what the best ones they can use on them. And then keep in mind, don't need to force the Ink Shadow item because most of the time you cannot get an Ink Shadow item till you're level 9, so therefore just 3 itemize Kaisa without having the Ink Shadow item in mind, and then by the time you're level 9, you just put the free item on Xayah. But if you don't have any items for Kaisa, then having the Ink Shadow item would be fine. Or if it's a tank one, then you just throw it on Galio, Silas, or even Udyr. And the best support items you can have for this board would be having a Moonstone, so you can stall out the board a little bit longer, and it makes your board a bit tankier. And then speaking of stall, Aegis is pretty okay with that, and on top of that, you get attack speed for your backline carries. And speaking of attack speed, Zeke's is really good for that, so you can get more cast off on your backline units. And then since your board stalls out for a pretty long time anyways, Big Gem's pretty good for that because a certain amount of time, then your board does a lot more damage. And for utility items, because you need anti-heal, the best anti-heal item holder would be Teemo with Morellicon, or you could put red buff on him, or even on like Kaisa, Xayah, like the red buff at least. And now we're moving on to the units, and then one of the openers you can do is Fortune, and then this kind of positioning is very good for this because this makes you have lose streak, and the more you lose, the more stacks you get for Fortune. So you want to put Kaboko in the corner, and you want to put the 2 rage units blocking his path, so you can keep losing more and more, so you can get more and more stacks. And then speaking of stacks, the best amount of stacks you can go for is 20 or more. The reason why 20 or more, you you can look it up yourself, but essentially it's just enough resources for Kaisa to come online. And if you want to do it at stage 3 as well for fortune, you can pivot into that instead as well. As long as you have more than 20 stacks is all you need. But to keep a reminder for playing stage 3 fortune, if for whatever reason you start around stage 3-2 or 3-3, it's kind of late at that point. But if you want to risk it, go for it. But a reminder, always cash out before stage 4 or 4-1. So by the time you hit 4-2, you hit level 8 and you roll down for the Kaisa board. And if you want to play a normal board, for at level 4, you have the Story Weaver opener where you have Sivir as your item holder for Kaisa. And then whatever level 2 tank you have, like Jax or Garen, you have the Galio items. And then most of the time you would want to look for a Last Whisper on Sivir. And then whatever tank items you can build on Garen, such as Gargoyle Stone Plates, or even a Redemption, or even Crown Guard, Protector's Vow, like any decent tank item is fine. If you want a win streak, Sunfire is the way to go. But if not, you can just build default tank items is fine. And then whatever 80 items you can find for your Kaisa, aka Sivir. But Last Whisper is must take. And then for KO, because you're playing Story Weaver, you want to put red on her so you can get more attack speed, so you can cast more abilities. And then having Riven with the extra attack speed helps you win a lot more, so doing this kind of positioning is actually pretty decent. And about to hit level 5, throwing in a Teemo would help a lot because you activate your trick shot with Sivir, so you do extra damage. If you cannot find a Teemo, having a +1 tank, like either an extra Warden level 2 or even an extra Bruiser level 2 would be fine as well. And about to hit level 6, you throw like a Bruiser or an extra Warden to complete like the front line. Or if it's the vice versa, if you did have an extra tank and didn't find a Teemo, then you can throw a Teemo in, and then by tank level 6, most of the time you have an extra item, so you can complete like an extra like IE for example for Sivir, or you get a Morellicon or an extra tank item for your main tank. And then level 7 doesn't really matter, you just throw whatever. You can throw an extra trick shot, you can throw an extra tank, it's just whatever you can find. Because most of the time when you hit level 7, you don't stay for 7 for too long, so it's just find whatever you can and econ manage well. Try to make as much money as you can, because when you hit level 8, you're gonna need all that money. And then by the time you're level 8, this is where you actually play the game and you play the full Kaisa board. By then, you should have like 2 full damage items or 3 on Kaisa already, which is like the BIS for example, Last Whisper, i.e. Giant Slayer, or whatever you can have. And then you have an anti-heal item on Teemo if you can. If not, it's fine. You can probably get it later. And then a couple tank items on your main tank, Galio. And then to fill up the rest of the board, to play the full board, is 4 Bruiser with Silas, Riven, Galio, Aatrox. And then for the backline, it's Kaisa, Sivir, Bard, with Teemo. But if you can hit Xayah, that works too instead of the Bard. And in this kind of positioning would be the best because you have KO to give attack speed for Kaisa, and KO is a 7 range unit, reasons why you put it in a corner, and Sivir gives more attack speed than KO, reasons why you don't put KO in the middle between Xayah and Kaisa. So by the time Sivir casts, she gives more attack speed to Xayah and Kaisa, and they're able to cast their abilities even more. And you just throw Teemo on the opposite side of your main carries. And in the tanks, it doesn't really matter, you just throw them wherever you want. It's situational, so whatever you do, just do whatever you can to win rounds. And if you need to flip-flop size for your backline, feel free to do so. But by the time you're level 9, you throw an Udyr, and at least on the corners, because the way how he works, it makes him do even more if you put him in the corners. And then by then, you should have like a +1 Ink Shadow item, so you can put the damage items on Xayah, or the extra tank ones on like Silas, or even Udyr, whichever one you want. It doesn't really matter. Or for example, if you get Toxin and don't have anti-heal, you can throw it on Xayah or Teemo. So this is it for level 9. Pretty basic, pretty easy to play. And then for the augments, the best one you can take is Lucky Ricochet. This augment actually amplifies your trick shots, so this is really good for that. Little Buddies is very powerful for both Xayah and Kaisa. It makes them do extra damage, and it makes your tanks a little bit more bulkier, such as Silas, Galio, and Udyr. And a new recruit is always good because having a +1 unit helps a lot, and you can also throw out Udyr quicker that way, or like an Ink Shadow item right away, like Jax or something. And then it also gets you a duplicator, so you can level 2 stuff quicker. Jewel Lotus is very powerful because most of the time you're casting abilities on this board, and then having the extra crit helps a lot with that crit on your ability. And then you have My Sword is very powerful for trick shots in general because most of them are AD, so having the extra AD helps a lot. And you need a lot of swords on this board, so this helps that. And a Potable Forge, you can never go wrong with having any Ornn artifact besides AP. But if you do get AP1, just throw it on Teemo, it's fine. And then Tiny But Deadly is pretty good because it gives you more damage, more attack speed for your board. And then Martyr to sustain even more. Same with Unified Resistance, gives you some sustain. Or if you don't have any items, Big Grab Bag is good for that. And that is it for my Kaisa Bruiser guide for patch 14.13. Now, I'm going to be slowing down on my comp guide series a little bit because we're almost here for set 12. So I'm going to be making just the mainstream meta comps for a comp guide series until we hit set 12. So just be on the lookout for like comps that you can find that you would like to play, and I'm going to be slowly making them. Speaking of that, if you want me to cover a different comp, just let me know down in the comment section down below. And until then, I'll see you guys later.